is up, everybody? It is yours truly, and today I'm decided that I'm going to point and laugh at some losers today that lost in week two, along with giving some round of applause for um, some winners that won in week two, especially one at big time. If you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button. I'm not saying this because it's just me. I really don't care what you do. It's just way YouTube operates is that the more people that hit the like button, the more it gets recommended in the algorithm and goes out to other people that haven't seen this channel yet. Uh, Anyways, if you want to help the channel out, you can. You can hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Anyways, let's point and laugh at some losers for week two, uh, along with giving some praise to the winners. Yeah, obviously, as you can see, I'm trying something new. You can see my ugly face for the well, not for the first time, but first time in a video in a long time. I mean, I'm not here to get or criticize or not criticize anybody's ugliness. I know I'm ugly, so you know. Um, you don't have to give me no makeup tutorials or beauty tutorials because really, I'm just somewhat ugly slob. So, yeah. Anyways, let's point and laugh at some losers. Let's get to it. But before we start pointing and laughing at losers, let's look at the record that for week two. Um, as I'm recording this, the USC and Stanford game's going on. However, as I am recording this right now, USC is blowing out Stanford. So I'm pretty confident that the record that's on the screen will hold. In the case that USC blows it, I drop a game because I predicted USC to win and cover the points. Um, so for week two, I was 20-3, making an 80% or 87% accuracy rating. Three games I missed out on were I predicted Tulane to win over Ole Miss. They didn't. Predicted Wisconsin to win, and they didn't. And then finally Texas A&M. I was three games short of calling a perfect game. When you see picks against the spread, that means did they cover the spread? Meaning, based off of what they were favored by. That's just this is a Vegas number. I in addition to me picking the winners, I try to predict would they cover the spread. I was 18-5, which puts me at 78%. There was a couple of closer games than I expected. Like North Carolina and App State. I figured North Carolina was going to cover the points, but they didn't. Yeah, and I forgot what the other game was. In addition to the three games that I thought the teams would win, but they didn't. Anyways, let's go and give a round of applause to the winners from week two.
First up on the week two winners list is going to be Georgia. Georgia won 45-3 and pretty much blew out Ball State. Now this game was close through the first quarter. It was scoreless after one, but after that it was just all Georgia from there. There's not really much to talk about other than maybe Georgia just needs to get off to a better start whenever they have to play Power 5 opponents, or pretty much when they get into conference play. So, that's the only thing that needs to be mentioned about Georgia. And going down the list, you have Michigan. They won 35-7 over UNLV. Once again, just like Georgia, they just need to get better. A win's a win, regardless. So I'm not talking shit about them struggling. It's just from what I've heard from Michigan fans, is they like to pull their stars pretty early, like in the second half. All that is kind of smart. you kind of need to give them a little bit more experience. Other than that, it was not much to talk about for Michigan. Next on the list is Florida State. Florida State blew out Southern Miss to a tune of 66-13. Once again, not much to talk about in that game. So, next on the list is Ohio State. They won 35-7 as well. Unlike Michigan, Ohio State played Youngstown State, an FCS opponent. So this doesn't look all that good for Ohio State. Yeah, a win, but beating Youngstown State, an FCS school, by 28 versus Michigan beating an FBS opponent, a Group of 5 team, 35-7. I'm not trying to compare apples to apples, but when it is what it is, I guess. To me, it looks like Ohio State's quarterback is still struggling, even though they've gotten better this game versus last game against Indiana. But overall, it's a good win for Ohio State. Now, next on the list is going to be USC. They pretty much blew out Stanford out of the water. It was over by halftime. This game was 49-3 at the half. And pretty much USC pulled their starters and put the second and third stringers in, and yeah, they blew out Stanford 56-10 in this one. Coming in number 7 on the list is Penn State. Now, Penn State, this game was over at halftime, and when they were done, when it finally got done with Delaware, they ended up beating them 63-7. Now, I wouldn't say this was an impressive win, but compared to Ohio State, this was an impressive win for Michigan or for Penn State. Yeah, this was not really much to talk about for the game. This was a tune-up game for Penn State for their conference opener, which is Illinois next week on the road. So a nice win for Penn State. Next on the list is number 8, Washington. This game, like with with Penn State, this was over by halftime. They played Tulsa. They ended up beating them 43-10. Like with Penn State, there's not really much to talk about. Michael Penix was in rhythm and in sync with this one. Now, Washington will have to play Michigan State. I don't know why I'm swapping the two out. They have to play Michigan State next week on the road. Speaking of Michigan State, I'm going to make a video about Michigan State with this one. With all the shit that's coming out with Michigan, with the university, and with the head coach of Michigan State. It'll probably come out either later on today or tomorrow. I don't know yet. Other than that, it was a good win for Washington. But number 9, Tennessee, on the other hand, there's a lot to be desired there. They played Austin Peay this week, and they struggled mightily with Austin Peay. I think at halftime it was like 13-6 with Austin Peay. Yeah, Tennessee, you gotta be doing better than that. You should be beating Austin Peay by 40-50 points, especially with a high flying offense you have. Yeah, you should be beating them 40-50 points. There's no excuse why you're struggling with Austin Peay, especially when you have aspirations to possibly win the East this year and represent the East. If you're struggling with Austin Peay, you're not gonna be in second place in SEC East. You're going to be probably like third or fourth, yeah, at best. Especially when you have to go play Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia this year in conference play. Yeah, you're gonna have to get better. You're gonna have to send Milton back to training camps or practice to work on his accuracy, because he was constantly overthrowing, underthrowing guys. And when you're overthrowing, underthrowing guys, it doesn't help them out, because then they have to either come back for the ball or reach out for the ball. You can get away with it with these teams like Austin Peay and even last week against Virginia, but when you have to play a much more talented team, you're not going to have so much luck doing that. Moving on, number 10, Notre Dame won 45-24. Now, this game was close at halftime. It was 17-7 at halftime. And this game took forever to get finished because of weather. That was a common theme with, especially the noon games, with weather. There was a number of games being delayed because of weather. Eventually Notre Dame just pulled away, wore out, and fatigued NC State and eventually won 45-24. Oh yeah, another note about Tennessee. Next week they'll have to play Florida, so that's another game that they should be able to beat Florida by 30-40 at least, because Florida's just terrible on offense. If Florida wins that game, it would be a big surprise for me and for Tennessee. Back to Notre Dame. They won by 21 on the road against a Power 5 team. Their first, not first attempt, but first time playing a Power 5 team this year. Next week they'll have a home game with Central Michigan. And that's going to be a common theme with next week, because there's not going to be a lot of good matchups next week. You're going to have either a ranked team playing another Group of 5 team or FCS team, or teams will open up their conference play, but it's not against a ranked team. So there's not going to be a ton of good matchups next week. Speaking of impressive wins, we got to give a big round of applause for Texas. They ended up taking care of business on the road against Alabama. They pretty much dominated this game with Alabama. However, they were back and forth. This game was close all the way down to the end. It wasn't like Texas pulled out to an early lead and Alabama tried to come back. It was just close all the way down to the end in this one. However, I do think Texas still needs to work on some execution, because they've left some points on the table, and I think they even missed a field goal in this one. Other than that, I think they did a good job. And as far as Alabama, Milroe ain't the answer, or Mildew, whatever. He ain't the answer. He's playing like booty cheeks out there. He can throw the deep ball, but as far as the mediums and short routes, no. He ended up throwing a touchdown and 2 picks in this one. Pretty much gift-wrapped Texas a touchdown, because although he didn't throw a pick 6, he pretty much put Texas at the 5, and Texas scored on the next play. So, they're gonna have to do something about that. Next week for Texas, it's gonna be Wyoming. At home. So, it'd be another tune-up game for Texas in this one. And then we move on to the list. Utah, they pulled this one out of their ass. They did not look great at all. In fact, they looked terrible all game long against Baylor. This was like a 13-6, 13-3, 10-3, whatever game all game long. It was a defensive battle, no doubt. But however, I do think if Baylor was better or better coached, I guess this should have been like a 2-touchdown upset for Utah, or for Baylor over Utah. However, Baylor allowed Utah to hang around, and then late in the game, Utah put together a drive to tie the game. This was also one of the best endings of the week. they put together a drive to tie the game, and then Baylor threw a pick. The quarterback threw a pick. They were set up inside the 30. And then Utah drove down the field, and the Baylor players pushed the Utah running back in to take the lead, so Baylor would have more time on the clock. And then Baylor threw a Hail Mary. It was caught at the 25. And then they had one more chance. Baylor threw up another Hail Mary to the end zone. It was broken up, incomplete, game over. Utah won. Overall, Utah turned a loss into a win with this game. However, they just did not look good. Both to give credit, both teams were playing their backup quarterbacks, but to me, Utah's backup quarterback played worse than Baylor's backup quarterback did. It's just they didn't put together the drives. Next week, Utah will have Weber State, another tune-up game. They probably need that tune-up game to get all the offensive bugs out of their system before they play UCLA the week after. Next team on the list is Oregon. Now, Oregon came in number 13 in this game. This was a great game between them and Texas Tech. Back and forth they went. This was a close game all the way down to the end, really, as the scoreboard showed. In fact, it pretty much took a pick six to give Oregon their biggest lead of the game, or one of their biggest leads of the game. They kicked a game-winning field goal with a minute to go. Texas Tech was trying to drive down the ball. Texas Tech quarterback got pressured and threw it right into the hands of a defensive lineman for Oregon and took it back to the house. A big man touchdown. Not a scoop and score big man touchdown, but a pick six big man touchdown. To get the final score to 38-30 now. Texas Tech was able to throw it down the field, get to about the Oregon 30, and they tried another Hail Mary attempt. Didn't go through. Incomplete. Game over. Oregon wins. It was a pretty impressive win for Oregon in this one, as they go to 2-0, and they will face Weber State. They face Hawaii next week at home on the Pac-12 network, a 8 o'clock game. If you want to watch that game, you're gonna have to find a way to watch it, either through the Pac-12 network or some other source. And I wouldn't blame you if you didn't sign up for the Pac-12, because you'd only be signing up for this year, essentially, unless something happens with the two remaining teams in the Pac-12 going on for next year. Next on the list is LSU. Now, LSU pretty much beat the brakes off of Grambling. I think Brian Kelly took out his grievances from getting his ass kicked by Florida State last week onto Grambling. Not really much to talk about with this game. It was pretty much over. So next week for LSU, they will have Mississippi State on the road, and they will have to play them at noon for LSU. So it should be an interesting game to open up conference play for LSU. Next on the list is going to be Kansas State. Kansas State won 42-16 over Troy. Now, this game was not over, but it was close at the first half. I think the score was like 21-10 with Troy. Other than that, Kansas State ended up pulling away from Troy in the second half. Or, actually, no, that's a typo. They ended up beating Kansas State, or they ended up beating Troy 42-13, not 16. I don't know. I think my scoreboard glitched out as I was typing it out and recording it. So it's 42-13. It really doesn't matter. Kansas State still won this game. It just makes it even a little bit bigger margin of victory. Now, next week for Kansas State, they will have to go on the road to play Missouri. Of course, another noon game for Kansas State. This one. Now, next on the list is number 16, Oregon State. Oregon State ended up beating out UC Davis 55-7. Not really much to talk about in that game. Another impressive win for Oregon State in this one. Next week they will have to play. San Diego State, a decent Group of 5 team, I would say. Other than that, there's not really much to talk about with that one. Now, coming in at number 17 is North Carolina. North Carolina struggled mightily with Appalachian State, and this was a very good game by these two teams. This one even went to overtime, or actually it ended up in double overtime. Both teams scored touchdowns in overtime. North Carolina got a touchdown, failed a 2-point conversion. Appalachian State, failed on 4th down. Ball game over with. North Carolina hangs on to win. I'm glad North Carolina was able to hold on to a win, but it's not a good sign for North Carolina going forward. I know Appalachian State is a pretty good Group of 5 team. They're notorious for beating the Power 5 teams. I almost view Appalachian State as like the Boise State from the 2000s and early 2010s. Like, you have to be on your toes with Appalachian State because they will beat you. In fact, they beat Texas A&M last year in College Station. So, it is what it is, I guess. North Carolina next week will have to play Minnesota at home. That's another game that they should be able to take care of. Minnesota's not all that good. So, anyways, moving on the list. Oklahoma comes in at number 18 this week. They played SMU at home and beat them 28-11. I guess the Vegas sports books were right about this one. This was like a small point spread. I figured this was going to be like a 20-30 point spread between SMU and Oklahoma, but turns out they're right, I guess. This was a close game all the way up to the fourth quarter. Oklahoma ended up pulling away in the fourth quarter and winning this one 28-11 over SMU. Now for Oklahoma next week, they will have to play. Who have they played? They will play Tulsa. So they probably need to take some lessons from Washington and try to beat them like Washington did. Other than that, it's a good, impressive win for Oklahoma. And finally, to wrap up the list of winners, we got Ole Miss. Ole Miss ended up beating Tulane in this one. Now, Ole Miss was trailing in this game 17-7, I believe, or it could have been like 14-7, 17-7, something like that. They were trailing by at least a touchdown at halftime. Ole Miss ended up putting it together and ended up winning this one by 17. Now, this one was a little bit inflated because the Tulane person, they're playing with their backup quarterback, which kind of sucked for Tulane fans. He ended up trying to lead his team down the field, down by 10, and maybe get a touchdown and get an onside kick. He ended up having the ball stripped. Ole Miss defender picked it up and scooped it up for a touchdown. It just fell apart for Tulane at the end in that one. We'll talk about Tulane in the loser section, so and more in depth. Other than that, I guess it was a good win for Ole Miss in this one. Jackson Dart looked pretty okay, I guess. Good. He didn't throw no picks that I'm concerned about. He might have. I just don't remember off the top of my head if he did or not. Ole Miss next week will have to play. They'll have to play Georgia Tech. So another Power 5 team for Ole Miss. This time I think it is at home for them. So yeah, I think Ole Miss should be able to take care of Georgia Tech in this one. Next on the list is Duke. They come in this week ranked 21. They play Lafayette. This one, I think it was close in the first half or maybe the first quarter, but Duke just ended up pulling away from Lafayette. Not really much to talk about with that game. It was a good win for Duke. Next week they'll have to play Northwestern, so another team that they should be able to take care of and dominate against, which is Northwestern. Next on the list is Colorado coming in at number 22. This game, even though the scoreboard showed it, it was not close at all. To me, it felt like Colorado dominated Nebraska on all facets. Shedeur had another good game. This one, Nebraska. We'll talk about Nebraska more in depth when we get into the loser section and point and laugh at them, but this did not look good at all. Not much to say about it. Other than that, good win for Colorado. They play Colorado State next week. I think even game day is going to be at Colorado for next week when they play Colorado State. And then finally, to wrap everything up, Clemson barely hanging on to a top 25 ranking after getting demolished by Duke. They ended up playing Charleston Southern this week, and Clemson looked awful in the first half. Yeah, they were leading Charleston Southern in the first half, but they only was leading them by a touchdown over Charleston Southern. Now, of the 17 points, pretty much 14 of them was because of turnovers. Before you think, oh, Clemson, it's gonna suck ass. They're not gonna make a bowl game. Da 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 da. Well, one of the plays that Charleston Southern scored, Clemson fumbled at their own 1. So, next play they punch it in for a touchdown, and then Clemson quarterback threw a pick 6. That's another 6 points right there. So that's 14 points off of turnovers. Clemson's going to have to clean up the fumbles. That's what plagued them last week, and that's what plagued them this week. Clemson ended up pulling away in the second half and basically beat the brakes off of Charleston Southern by a tune of 66-17. But they got to clean up on the turnovers for Clemson. You're not going to be able to win games if you keep fumbling the ball away or keep fumbling the exchange away. Other than that, that's going to wrap up the winners for this week in week 2. Now let's point and laugh at some losers for week 2, starting off with Alabama. Alabama, I'm going to tell you this right now. Jalen Milroe is not the answer. More like Jalen Mildew. He's nowhere near like Bryce Young, where he'll lead you to he'll basically carry the team to some wins. Don't get me wrong, Jalen Mildew has he has the deep ball, but all Jalen Mildew is a glorified Anthony Richardson with more talent around him. That's all he is. Say it ain't so. Also, what is up with one of your players wearing a freaking binky or pacifier in the game, like a golden binky or a golden pacifier? What's that? I mean, I thought we were supposed to be playing like grown men, not like a bunch of children. or babies, even though most of the Alabama fan base acts like a bunch of babies when they lose. So, you know, I wouldn't consider being far fetched. I digress. Next on the list is Wisconsin. Wisconsin is going to be a rough year for you, transitioning from I formation football to air raid football. Like you're talking about like two different, almost two polar opposite different schemes. With power formation, you got big, burly offensive linemen, halfbacks, fullbacks, you name it. Now you're talking about air raid system where basically having to dish out the ball out in space and hoping people miss, or just trying to beat them with a deep ball. Wisconsin doesn't have the receivers to burn people just yet on a deep ball. And also, do we need to put Braylon Allen on a milk carton? Where has he been? I thought he was supposed to be the best back in the Big Ten. Where is he at? Do I need to put him on the milk carton and figure out if he's missing or not? Anyways, it was a good win for Washington State, getting I guess an impressive win for them at home for them and they pretty much swept the series on Washington or on Wisconsin in this one. Next on the list is Tulane. Now, I hate to put them on the list, but they lost, so you got to put them on the list. Tulane played a pretty good game for based off what they have and based off the fact that their backup quarterback started the entire game because Michael Pratt couldn't go. Maybe the game would have went different if Michael Pratt could have played. I don't know, but it was an overall good effort for Tulane. It's just, it fell apart on them at the end. I hate to put them on a list here, but kind of have to when you lose. Those were some of the ranked losses. Oh yeah, I forgot one other. Texas A&M. What the hell you doing over there, Jimbo? This is pretty much unexcusable. You lose on the road and get your ass beat by something called the Hurricanes, which all the Hurricane. That's the thing I don't get about Miami. You call yourselves the Hurricanes, but your mascot is a duck. Make it make sense for me. Anyways, enough about Miami. Texas A&M, they got pretty much obliterated by Miami in this one to a tune of 48-33. They almost gave up a 50 burger to Miami in this one. It's just unexcusable for Texas A&M, and they can't beat Miami. It's going to be a long season for Texas A&M, just like it was last year. And I'm willing to put money down that the Texas A&M boosters are trying to find a way to get out Jimbo's contract and get rid of him, because Jimbo actually has done worse at Texas. I found this out the other day. Jimbo's done worse at Texas A&M than Kevin Summerlin did. That's saying a lot. Kevin Summerlin didn't do a ton in Texas A&M, just like Jimbo hasn't. The only difference is Jimbo's locked into a freaking Bill Gates style contract. It's not his fault. It's just the stupidity of Texas A&M's boosters giving him a huge contract. Yeah, that's the only reason he didn't get fired last year, was because of his buyout. Because they would have to pay him out like $80 million, and I don't think the boosters got that on hand, or else they would have fired him. I think that's all the ranked losses. Let's pull up some honorable mention, or not honorable mention, but dishonorable mentions. Texas Tech, yeah. This is a game that you should have won, and frankly should have won. What is up with you calling or going for on 4th and 2 from your own 30? What the hell was that? Even if you made that, I would still chastise you for that call. Obviously you didn't, and gave Oregon prime prime real estate there. Fortunately for you, you only gave up a field goal instead of a touchdown, but you should have gave up a touchdown and then some for that whack ass call. Going for it on 4th and 2 from your own 30. Yeah, of course it. Of course, Oregon sniffed at that one like a bloodhound. Other than that, yeah, you dropped to 0-2 in this one. I'm not sure. I think you play Houston next week. Good luck playing against Houston if you're call some boneheaded plays like that, like you did against Oregon this week. Let me double check to make sure you're playing Houston before I say something that's wrong. Nope, you're actually playing Tarleton State, so I was wrong. So you should be able to beat Tarleton State by 100 billion points. Other than that, yeah, you deserve to be on this list for that 4th and 2 call. I might would have put you on this list even if you won the game. Yeah. Next is going to be Nebraska. What the hell are you doing, Matt Rule? What the hell? I thought this was supposed to be a new and improved Nebraska. All I see is the old and consistent Nebraska fall on their face each and every week. Only this time, they're getting blown out by more points than under Scott Frost. I know Matt Rule stated that he wanted to turn back the clock and play I formation football. Matt Rule, there's only one problem with that. Nobody else is turning back the clock. In fact, they're trying to move the clock forward. Nobody else is trying to go back to the I formation days, like back in the 90s and the 2000s. It's just not going to happen with. Plus, their quarterback. I don't understand why you let the quarterback that has committed 7 turnovers in a game and a half still be playing in that game. I mean, I'm not a coach and I don't get paid millions of dollars like these coaches do, but I'd be pulling them out. Like, you can't be turning the ball over for me and still be expected to start for me. No. You gotta come out. I don't care how bad the backup is. He's got Jeff Sims. He was trash at Georgia Tech, and it looks like he's trash at Nebraska. Same song, different team. Type of deal. So for Nebraska next week, you're going to be playing. I'll pull up here. I'm pulling it up now. You're going to be playing Northern Illinois. You better damn well beat Northern Illinois in this one, because it's pretty unexcusable. You somehow made Colorado look better on defense, than TCU did, and TCU put up 42 on Colorado. You put up 14. You did slightly better than against Minnesota, but that ain't really saying much. You should have been able to run up and down the field on Colorado on this game, but you fall flat on your face, gave up 3 bonus possessions to Colorado, and you deserve to lose when you lose the turnover battle. Next on the list is Baylor. Baylor should have won this game over Utah. I'm going to say it flat out. They should have beaten Utah by at least 2 or 3 touchdowns, because Utah on offense was terrible. And I do mean terrible. They let Utah hang around all game long, and finally Utah struck late in the game to tie the game up. And then in the very next drive, the Baylor quarterback throws it right to the Utah player for a pick, and then puts Utah inside the Baylor 30. From there they scored another touchdown, and you almost came back to tie the game up to force overtime, but that shouldn't have happened. I know you were playing your backup quarterback, but your backup quarterback, to me, looked better than the backup quarterback for Utah. Yeah, you deserve to lose when you let a ranked team hang around with you at home. I
I think next for Baylor on the list is, I think, is it BYU? Let me double check for Baylor. Oh no, it's Long Island. So yeah, you definitely should be able to beat Long Island, but I don't know. You lost to Texas State at home, so yeah, you lost to Texas State at home, so it's not a guarantee for Baylor. Although I do think you're gonna get a win over Long Island. Uh, yeah, and then next on the list is Virginia. Now Virginia, I hate to put them on the list because they were honoring the victims they lost to a mass shooting last week, or not last week, last year. This was their first home game. So I hate to put them on this list, but they were playing James Madison. Now, James Madison's a group of five team, or just became a group of five team, but historically they've been an FCS team. And James Madison came in. You had him on James Madison on the ropes, but you let him off the hook. And James Madison came back and threw a game-winning touchdown with a minute to go. Couldn't get to 2 points, but it didn't matter because you couldn't score on James Madison on your last drive. So it was game over. James Madison pulls. I think James Madison was favored in this game, but to me it didn't really matter. I felt like Virginia was a favorite at home to beat James Madison, but James Madison ended up coming in and beating y'all at home for Virginia. Virginia's starting off 0-2 for the season after getting their ass whipped by Tennessee the week before. Next on the list is Houston. Why I have Houston up here? Well, Houston, you're in the big boy leagues now. You're in the Big 12. You cannot be losing these group of five teams, especially against Rice. Now, now to be fair, Rice did blow a 28-0 lead. Yeah, they were up 28-0 on Houston. Houston came all the way back to tie the game up at 28, and they went to overtime. Both teams scored a touchdown, so it went to double overtime. Rice and Houston scored touchdowns. However, Rice was able to score a 2-point conversion. Houston was not. So that's the difference. Houston loses this one in double overtime. Just like last week, I'm giving the same treatment. Just like last week, with Texas Tech lost to Wyoming in double overtime. This is unexcusable for Houston, and it's going to be a rough season for them in the Big 12 in their first season. But you have to beat your teams like Rice to be able to have a little bit better record. I think Dana Holgorsen is going to be coaching for his job here in the coming weeks. I wouldn't even be surprised if Houston fired him mid-season because so the issue was that they had high hopes for Dana Holgorsen and the Houston squad last year, but they fell on their face last year in the American, and this year it doesn't look like it's going to be a good year for Houston because they lost all their talent they had. So their roster pretty much got overhauled in that case. So for Houston, I think your next game is, let's check it out for you. The next game for Houston is TCU, a home game for them. So you might be able to put up more points against TCU, but TCU is also more talented on offense than Rice is. So good luck, Houston. And finally, to wrap up the Week 2 losers is Appalachian State. Yeah, this is another team that I hate to put up here, but you had a chance to beat North Carolina on the road, and you let it slip through your fingers. You lost in double overtime to North Carolina. Overall, it was a good effort. It's that most people would wish that you'd. I don't want to sound like a college football fan that loves chaos, but everybody was hoping that would be able to pull off a win over North Carolina. Overall, it was a good effort for you. Other than that, you just get them next week, I guess. So that's going to wrap up the video for this week for, point and laugh at losers and, praise the winners. If you like the content, hit that subscribe button for the latest content. Hit that like button too if you enjoyed the video. It'll help the channel out so much. Thank you all so much for coming out and continuing to support the channel, either by watching the content, hitting the like button, or hitting the subscribe button. Either way, I do appreciate all the support that you give out. Even for a channel this size, I wouldn't do this channel without your support. So thank y'all so much for coming out, and I will see y'all next time.